Welcome to the Work Heartily podcast, where we grab no more than 15 minutes with Nashville leaders, executives that you know and admire, and some that you need to know, and ask them one big question. I'm your host, Jonathan Barnes. I'm coming to you from the Work Heartily headquarters here in Brentwood, Tennessee, where we help Nashville area businesses win through embedded fractional leadership. And today I am joined by Belmont University's Vice President and Director of Athletics, Scott Corley. Scott, I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm honored to be here. Look forward to our conversation.
Well, it sounds like you're ready for your question, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it, if that's okay with you. All right, here we go. All right, Scott. So what is the most expensive mistake you've made as a leader, and what did it cost you beyond money? That's a two-part question.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that question, I mean, certainly in my role and what I'm doing now, and even prior to my role when I was in the banking days, I mean, so much of what we do is a people business.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you're looking at hiring a coach to lead a program, things like that, it's hard to bat 1,000%. And in some cases, whether it's coaches or staff, I mean, you may make a mistake, and I have done that in my career. I'm certainly like every other leader, it's hard to get it right every time. And so, what I learned though, at an early age in my career, is after you've given that person the opportunity to grow, and if they still can't grow and figure out the things that you need as a leader, you've got to be quick to make that decision on whether you're going to, move on from this person or whatnot. And, I remember when I was in my banking days, I had to make a decision on an administrative assistant, and it just was killing me. I never had to do that before. And candidly, what I learned is she was equally wanting to find a reason to leave. And so, I got past that one pretty soon. But the thing you learn is if you don't make that decision, it could really, set you back. So much about business and so much of what we do in athletics, it's about momentum and how you build off momentum. And when you make a mistake on personnel and you don't make that hard decision, it could really continue to derail any momentum you have. Certainly the rest of the staff can notice that, the leader's not willing to make some hard decisions. And so that can have impact and impact, the trust factor there. And so while it's really, really hard, I mean, it's so much a people business and what we do in athletics, Jonathan. In a way, I've got 13 coaches that are literally running like 13 different businesses, if you want to use a business analogy.
Yeah, it's kind of like you've got a holding company with 13 different service lines and 13 different CEOs running those service lines for you. I think when you talk about it costing you more beyond just money, what you just told me is nothing to do with money, even though you're spending money, but it's really the time and what you said about momentum. You are sacrificing, the onboarding expense and time where you could be spending that time getting the right person in place. In fact, you're wasting time and money if you don't make that decision soon enough, as soon as you know it, of course. And obviously the administrative assistant, that example, hey, that's great because it was mutual, right? But it's the issue where, maybe they're a great person, they're just not the right fit for the position that you're in or the program you have them in, and recognizing that. I think that's what leaders have to be able to do, to recognize that and make the quick decision and get them, give them a nice out, a good path to be at a place where they're actually in the right position. It's all those things. And you mentioned culture too. How does that affect the culture and trust? Man, all that stuff is so important in athletics and in business. I mean, it's just it's a key element of what's going on. So I guess the follow-up question is, okay, you recognize that. Do you talk to your peers? How do you say, hey, am I crazy here, or is this right? Or what do you do in those situations?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, you've got to trust your gut a little bit. You got to obviously make sure you're paying attention, and certainly there's people you can lean on to say, how did you handle this situation? And it is the hardest part because, they're, in most cases, they're good people that want to do a good job. They just don't necessarily have what it takes to do the role that you're asking them to do. And
That's right.
so, some of it is just leaning on past experience as well, Jonathan, and knowing that your objective as a leader is to look out for the entire department. In my case,
Yeah.
I got to look out what's best for everything, for our student athletes, for all those factors that go into it. And so, and just knowing you've got to do what's right for that sometimes
Yeah.
makes it easier to realize. And there's different ways you got to evaluate it, right? In
Yeah.
what we do in athletics, there's a scoreboard for a reason, but it's not all about just the wins and losses. That's certainly a huge component of it, but it's the other things. Is this individual helping cultivate, like we said, a positive culture, allowing the
Right.
student athletes to do things outside of just the sport? What other things, can that coach bring out in those student athletes? And so that's part of the difficult part as well, because it's particularly at Belmont, we're not a win at all costs program.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to, most of our student athletes, if not all of them, come here to get a degree, at the end of the
Right.
day and those things. But so how do you, I do talk to other ADs. How do you measure those types of things against other things and really help me think through all the different angles on it before you have to make that difficult decision?
Yeah. There's wisdom in the counsel of many in a lot of ways. Now, tell me have how has any of the new landscape of athletics changed some of the way that you have made some of those decisions, or just it changed your outlook in general, or the way you're trying to approach your program?
Yeah, great question. I mean, what I have noticed is there's no more difficult time to be a coach in Division
Mm,
One athletics than right now. It's been such a seismic shift in such a quick amount of time. So part of my role is to actually be there to support them and to help them as they are navigating so many changes and so many things that could be counter to why they got into this business in the first place. And so you
right.
got to start there and recognize that I need to show some grace, patience, and understanding as a leader myself when they're going through these challenges. And how can I be there to help them have the tools to succeed? So, I do think that has become even a more important role in what I do than in the past, because it is tough right now, and we all need to recognize that. And there's again, it's not all about wins and losses. It's how do you help navigate them through a difficult, turbulent time that we're in?
Yeah, so it's not just you being a CEO of a holding company with 13 other CEOs underneath you. It's also the fact that the regulations have changed, and the whole game, the landscape has changed for each one of those 13 coaches that you're working with. And so I wonder how it's affected their recruitment efforts, or has the I'm just curious what kind of questions, because I'm sure the listeners are going to ask, like, oh, well, these are the kind of questions these coaches are getting or are having. Obviously, just to protect the innocent, you don't have to name any names, but I'm just curious of how that's affecting you and them in their day to day.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. In men's basketball, we had a coach, Rick Bird, who was here for 33 years. And in those 33 years, I think he had one or two players transfer.
Okay,
It was just, the rules, just everything was so much different. And I would say in the last 3 years in men's basketball alone, we're averaging 6 transfers each year.
my
Um,
goodness, yeah, that is
and
a
so
seismic shift.
yeah, it's really different. And so, what I try to do as a leader and remind them is, let's control what we can control.
Sure,
Let's, when we do have the student athletes here, how can we make it the best experience they have? And, understand that if they're a really good player, there's the possibility that we will lose them after a year or two. And that's not the end of the world. It doesn't feel great, but it's, hopefully that means they've done a lot of good things while they were at Belmont and helped us win a lot of games, right?
sure.
And did it in the right way and things like that. So, that is where it's, again, try to stay to our core values, try to focus on the North Star. And we talk about that a lot because it's easy to get caught up in a lot of the noise that's out there, a lot of the numbers you hear out there, things like that. But at the end of the day, I still truly believe in my heart of hearts, again, 97% of our student athletes come to Belmont for all the right reasons, for being part of a to be able to compete at a high level, to be part of a team. It's still Division I athletics is still one of the greatest leadership laboratories in the world. You know, if they want to grow spiritually, they can do that at Belmont. Academically, graduate, all those things. And you've got to remind yourself that, yeah, maybe you're going to lose more students in the transfer portal than you ever have, but still you're retaining close to 90% to 95%. So let's focus on those.
You know, I think I think what you're saying it's very applicable, obviously, to athletics and in business. But you know, to establish a great culture where people want to be, and that you understand what your culture is, and you know, like we said earlier, it might not be the right fit. Hey, they're you know not compatible with the culture you have. That's okay. They can move on to something else. But while they're here, you're responsible, and your coaches are responsible, your leaders are responsible for fostering that culture that you know yourself to be, and you're not just changing it willy-nilly. And I think that's attractive, probably. That's one of the reasons why these people are coming. The student athletes are coming to your program because they want to get a good degree, a good experience, and they have opportunities to grow. And if they're not, it's okay. They can move on. But you are responsible, like you said. What can I control? Okay, I can focus on the culture. I can focus on fostering great leaders where we are and grow them as students, grow them as athletes, grow them as people, as future leaders of the communities that they're going to be in. Hopefully they'll stick around Nashville because we like people to stick around here.
Amen. I tell that all the time. I mean, because we do graduate some pretty spectacular human beings, you know, because the challenges of being a Division I athlete and getting the degree is tough. And I want them all to stay in Nashville because they're only going to help make Nashville better because they're pretty remarkable young people.
Yeah. Well, any other words of wisdom you want to leave us with, leave the podcast listeners with?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, as a leader, you just got to stay focused on your North Star. And I know that sounds simple, but, you know, there's always going to be turbulence. There's always going to be noise out there. But I truly believe, even in Division I athletics, if you stay true to your core values, at the end of the day, that is still going to win out. And it's going to allow us to win a lot of games on the field of play because there are still a lot of young people that want to be part of that. And it's going to allow us to win outside of what happens on the field of play. And that's what excites me. That's what gets me up every morning and knowing that I get an opportunity to impact young people. And also, obviously, the coaches and the staff at Belmont. I get an opportunity to impact them in hopefully a very positive way. So, yeah, I love what I get to do. I'm blessed.
Keep it up. That's great. Thank you. Well, thank you all for spending time with us on the Work Hardly podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe and share the episode with another leader that you know. You can visit workheartily.com to learn how embedded fractional leadership can help you and your business and your team grow. Until next time, we will see you then. Thanks again, Scott, for joining us.
Thank you.